Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and once again, Diablo 4. With the early access release coming super soon now, it's time to think about what build to use while leveling. There is a lot of choice and variety of playstyles that are going to affect how strong and fast we will be when we're leveling, and as I plan to main a rogue, I've been planning out exactly what I will level as I go, so I don't have to slow down and think about it during gameplay. This build then is my ideal leveling setup in the opening days while I work my way to 50, and is focused on the very popular Twisting Blades core ability. It features a ton of mobility and burst damage to go with that, leading to insanely effective AoE clear. Thanks to the benefits of poison and very high energy generation, I'll be able to deal great single target DPS on top of that, alongside some important survivability options. Let's go through the build though, why I'm picking what I am, and what important details outside of that like specialization and aspects I'm going to run. As you can see, I've got my theory crafted build set up in a talent tree calculator. There's quite a lot of them out there, but this is just the d4builds.gg version, since I think it's just pretty clean for this video, but feel free to use whatever you like. You can easily find them just by googling them. This is the one I picked. Starting from the top then, we have our basics. I have picked Puncture for obvious reasons. As this is a melee focused build, having something that gives me a consistent range option like Puncture where I'm throwing these knives, it means if there's ever like goop on the ground that I just can't stand in and the boss is standing in it, I can still DPS. So there's great benefit just because of that. Every third cast is going to slow enemies by 20% for 2 seconds. Crits are going to make that happen all the time, meaning we have some active CC in this as well. When we enhance it, things get interesting. We gain energy whenever we damage a crowd control enemy, and we're creating our own crowd control slow with this ability. Finally, the all-important one here, and why this basic is so insane, is this enhancement, Fundamental Puncture. It now throws the blades in a sort of spread, and if you hit an enemy with 2 blades at once, it causes them to be vulnerable. A basic that generates infinite vulnerability at range is insane, and we're going to benefit from vulnerability in this build in so many ways. Next up, let's talk core skills. This is a Twisting Blades build, so obviously that's what we're going for. The primary source of damage in our DPS. We impale an enemy with the blades, and then after a short delay, the blade will fly back to me, piercing enemies on the way back to me. The idea then is to Twisting Blades an enemy, say at the back of the group, and then move through the group so the blades go through the whole group. We want this at 5 out of 5 with high priority, because you can see each time I level it, it's going to increase the damage, which is major. We also, of course, going to enhance this. This gets a 30% increased damage on return. And finally, with Advanced Twisting Blades, when these return, our active cooldowns are reduced by 0.25 seconds per enemy they pass through, so consistently in AoE, that's 3 seconds off all cooldowns. That's insane. Also in this tree, we have some passives, such as Sturdy to give us 4% close damage reduction, but mainly we actually push through that to get Siphoning Strikes, in which we heal for 3% of our maximum health whenever we critical strike a close enemy. This gives us sustainability. Not a high priority, but one to pick up when you have some spare points. Now we move down into the agility tree where things get very interesting and we start to fly around the combat. The whole idea behind Twisting Blades is to stab an enemy and move through the group rapidly. And as I'll explain at the end with the aspects, the Blade Dancer's aspect for Twisting Blades means the further you go, the further the blades fly, the more damage they do. So we need mobility. We need to be agile to avoid damage. This comes in the form of Shadow Step and also Dash. Shadow Step is being used largely as a way to get to a target and then Twisting Blades them, whereas Dash is going to be used to dash through packs of enemies out and away from the situation so the Piercing Blades can follow us out. Between the two of them, I've leveled Dash more because it reduces the cooldown massively, and Dash's mobility is free aim, you can go in any direction, where Shadow Step requires a target and that can be a little bit less consistent and reliable. Now we will enhance both of them. With Shadow Step, we're going to get the enhanced Shadow Step, and then between the two upgrades, we're going to make it so the Shadow Step can stun enemies. So this can be fantastic for dealing with tough situations later in the game. Meanwhile, with Dash, we're going to get that enhancement, and then of the two different upgrades, we go for a Disciplined Dash. This is because it will then become a 3-second 30% slow on enemies hit. If they're already slowed, then they even become dazed for 2 seconds. And with the 2 charges of Dash that it has, we can actually go through enemies and cause that ourselves. Lastly, in this tree then, we have Weapon Mastery for obvious reasons. Increasing damage to healthy enemies, straight up increasing damage with swords, and then the range benefits, which we don't care about in this build. In the next tree then, we have a couple things to talk about. As you can see, I've picked and shown Dark Shroud here, but I'm also considering Concealment here as well. Dark Shroud is a fantastic 8% damage reduction per active shadow. You get a bunch of shadows going around you, they're consumed as you take damage, it reduces the damage you take. We can make it so there's a 10% chance for these not to be consumed, and further, it can even give us movement speed. This is wonderful, especially for a melee build that's trying to get around quickly. However, in the early game, we're not going to be taking all that much damage, especially if you're playing in World Tier 1, which I mostly will be when power leveling. So I might even be taking this in the early game and then swapping to Dark Shroud later, which is very likely. Concealment's just going to let us go invisible, go in stealth for 4 seconds, and the upgrades are pretty good. For example, when we enter it, just instantly get 40 energy. That alone is a really powerful effect. So it's a consideration between these two, but overall I'm going to go Dark Shroud long term. Lastly, in this tree we have the passive upgrades of Exploit and Malice. These are major, you absolutely need these because we're making enemies vulnerable to do more damage. It's Malice that makes us deal 9% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. This is absolutely vital. But the one before it, Exploit, is not bad at all. 18% increased damage to healthy and injured enemies. It's nothing to ignore as well. But now it's time to talk about Poison and Imbuement. Imbuement means we can basically buff up our weapons, and in this case we'll have 2 skills that are going to get that imbuement on it. We're going to go for the Poison Imbuement because that's going to cause poison damage over time. As you can see, the poison damage applies 140% of the base damage and the poison damage over 5 seconds. This can crit, increasing the damage, and we want to maximize this damage and cooldown, so we've leveled it 5 out of 5. This is a large part of our DPS for clearing mobs over time, and obviously boss DPS. We enhance it to improve the duration and then blend it for the critical strikes to deal 75% increased poisoning damage, which is awesome. Also, when it comes to poison, then just below that we have some passives like Deadly Venom. 9% increased poisoning damage with 3 out of 3 on that is fantastic, and we can also snag a 1 level in alchemy advantage. Let's say we use Poison Imbuement and dash through a pack, poisoning a bunch of them. It's capped at 15%, so if we hit 15 enemies, we're going to get 15% additional attack speed. That's great for only 1 level. Also in this tree for another passive is going to be Precision Imbuement. That's 9% increased critical strike chance on our imbued abilities, so it's just going to make it more likely we crit with the poison. Now we come down to the ultimate tree, where you can see we're actually not taking an ultimate. I would like to lean on Shadow Clone as my favorite ultimate generally, but I found in my testing that the 60-second cooldown is a problem. I'm super powerful when I pop it, the burst is insane, and then I'm waiting say 45 seconds for it to come back again, and I feel significantly weaker there. Not taking that and going for more standard abilities and better passives means our DPS is a lot more consistent. For these powerful passives though, we're going to take Innovation, giving us Lucky Hit, meaning 30% chance to get 8 energy pretty regularly. That's going to restock us, which is great. And then we have Adrenaline Rush and Haste. We care more about Haste in this case because it means when we're above 50% energy, we get additional movement speed, but when we're below 50% energy, which will be a lot, it's 15% increased attack speed. That's going to be very consistent and very nice to have. Though Adrenaline Rush is useful, it just means while moving we have 5% increased regen on the energy, which is nice. Finally, for our last point at level 50 and 10 extra skill points, it's our ultimate passive, Momentum. We get a stack of momentum for 8 seconds if we hit an enemy from behind, which in group play, which I'll be doing, will be a lot. Then also it could be a dazed, frozen or stunned enemy. I'm playing with a Sorceress, so I'm going to be benefiting from that, and we can stun enemies ourselves or even daze them. But either way, at 3 stacks we're going to get 20% increased damage reduction, 30% increased regen on the energy, and even 15% movement speed. This should be fairly consistent in my group play plan, and we can also generate it ourselves. So a very powerful passive indeed. Now beyond the skill points, you might be wondering, well, what about the specialization? The rogue has 3 options. At level 20, you'll unlock Inner Sight, which for 4 seconds means infinite energy very regularly. That leads to massive DPS spikes while it's active and means we can absolutely spam abilities for a massive DPS. As this is a very energy heavy build and we're trying to get energy through many skills, obviously that's awesome. On the other hand, we have aspects. There's 2 main ones that I'm going to be looking for. Firstly, the Blade Dancer's aspect, as that is the Twisting Blades aspect. It causes them to orbit for a short time after they return, dealing 10 to 15% of the return hit damage per tick, but the damage actually increases by up to 30% the further the blades flew on return. So the further we get away from the initial target, the better. This is obviously key, vital, really important to a Twisting Blades build. So getting that as soon as you can, maybe with a lucky legendary drop, or once you reach the region where you can go to that dungeon and claim that aspect, it's a high priority. Secondly is Edge Master's aspect. This causes skills to deal 10 to 20% increased damage based on energy when cast. So the more energy you have, the better, and the max benefit is obviously when you have full energy. That synergizes perfectly with Inner Sight, meaning you're mega powerful whenever that procs. But there you have it it, that's my overview and plan for the rogue leveling in theory, and I'm looking forward to actually being able to go out and get the aspects that I need for this build. We'll see how things fall at the release though, because obviously I might get like a really good legendary for a different playstyle and build, a different core skill, and then I will adapt, and if so, I'll come back and talk to you about that. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.